This is the final broadcast of the Phase 1 era. The structural integrity of the vault has reached 0%. Redactions are failing, preparing for total archival collapse. The lights are out and the doors are wide open. There's nowhere left for the footsteps to hide. This is the retrieval we've been running from. The end of the beginning. This is Penpal. Footsteps. This is long, so I apologize for that. I've never had to tell this story with enough detail to actually explain it all the way. But it's true. And it happened when I was about 6 years old. In a quiet room, if you press your ear against a pillow, you can hear your heartbeat. As a kid, the muffled, rhythmic beats would sound like soft footsteps on a carpeted floor or so. Very often at night, as I was about to drift off to sleep, I would hear these footsteps and be ripped back to consciousness, terrified. For my entire childhood, I lived with my mother in a fairly nice neighborhood that was in a transitional phase. People of lower economic means were gradually moving in, and my mother and I were two of these people. We lived in the kind of house that you'd see being transported in 2 pieces on the interstate. But my mom took good care of it. There were a lot of woods surrounding the neighborhood that I would play in and explore during the day, but at night, as things often do to a child, they took on a more sinister feeling. This, coupled with the fact that due to the nature of our house, there was a fairly large crawl space underneath, filled my mind with imaginary monsters and inescapable scenarios, which would consume my thoughts when I was awoken by the footsteps. I told my mom about them once, and she said that I was imagining things. I persisted enough that she blasted my ears with water from a turkey baster once just to placket me, but I thought that would help. Of course it didn't. Despite all the creepiness and footsteps. The only weird thing that ever happened was that every now and then, I would wake up on the bottom bunk, despite having gone to sleep on the top. But this was not really weird, since I'd sometimes get up to piss or get something to drink and just not remember going back to sleep on the bottom bunk. I'm an only child, so it didn't matter. This would happen once or twice a week, but waking up on the bottom bunk wasn't too terrifying. But one night, I didn't wake up on the bottom bunk. I had heard the footsteps, but was too far gone to be woken up by them, and when I was awoken, it wasn't from the sound of footsteps or a nightmare, but because I was cold. Really cold. When I opened my eyes, I saw stars. I was in the woods. I sat up immediately and tried to figure out what was going on. I thought I might be dreaming, but that didn't seem right. Though neither did me being in the woods. There was a deflated pool float right in front of me, one of those ones shaped like a shark. This only added to the surreal feeling, but after a while it seemed like I just wasn't going to wake up. Because I wasn't asleep. I stood up to orient myself, but I didn't recognize these woods. I played in the ones by my house all the time. I knew them very well. But if these weren't the same ones, Then how could I get out? I took a step and felt a shooting pain in my foot, which knocked me back to where I had just been laying. I had stepped on a thorn. By the light of the moon, I could see they were everywhere. I looked at my other foot, but it was fine, and as a matter of fact, so was the rest of me. I didn't have another scratch on me, and I was hardly even dirty. I cried for a bit and then stood back up. I didn't know which way to go, so I just picked a direction. I resisted the urge to call out since I wasn't sure. I wanted to be found by who or what might be out there. I walked for what seemed like hours. I tried to walk in a straight line and tried to course correct when I had taken detours. But I was a kid and I was afraid. There weren't any howls or screams, and only once did I hear any noise that scared me. It sounded like a crying baby, but I think it was just a cat. I ran veering in different directions to avoid big thicks of bushes and collapsed trees. And I was paying close attention to where I stepped, because by that point my feet were in pretty bad shape, but I paid too much attention to where I was stepping, and not enough to where those steps were leading. Because not long after hearing the cry, I saw something that filled me with a kind of despair that I haven't experienced since. The pool float. I was only 10 feet from where I had woken up. It wasn't magic or some supernatural space bending. I was lost. Up until that moment, I thought more about getting out of the woods than how I got in, but being back at the beginning caused my mind to swim. I wasn't even sure that these were my woods. I had only been hoping that they were. Had I run in a huge circle around that spot? Or did I just get turned around and start making my way back? How was I going to get out? At the time, I thought the North Star would just be the brightest, and so I looked and found it and followed it. Eventually, things started to look more familiar, and when I saw the ditch, a dirt ditch my friends and I would have dirt-clawed wars in, I knew I had made it out. By that point, I was walking really slowly because my feet hurt so much, but I was happy to be so close to home, so I broke into a light jog. When I actually saw the roof of my house over a neighboring lower-set house, I let out a light sob and ran faster. I just wanted to be home. I had already decided I wouldn't say anything because I had no idea what I would possibly say. I would get back into the house somehow, clean up, and get in bed. My heart sunk as I rounded the corner, and my house came fully into view. Every light in the house was on. I knew my mom was up, and I knew I would have to at least try to explain where I had been, even if I couldn't figure that out myself. My run became a jog, which became a walk. I saw her silhouette through the blinds, and although I was worried about how to explain things to her, that didn't matter at that point. I walked up the couple of steps to the porch and put my hand on the doorknob and turned. Right before I pushed it, 2 arms wrapped around me and pulled me back. I screamed as loud as I could. "Help! Please! Mom!" The feeling, being so close to being safe and then being physically pulled away from it, filled me with a kind of dread that is, even after all these years, indescribable. The door I had been torn away from opened, and a flash of hope shot through my heart. But it wasn't my mom. It was a man, and he was enormous. I thrashed around and kicked at the shins of the person holding me, while also trying to get away from the person who had just come out of my house. I was scared and screaming. "Let me go! Where is she? What did you do to her?" As my throat stung from screaming and I was drawing in another breath, I became aware of a sound that had been present for longer than I had perceived it. "Honey, please, calm down. I've got you." The arms loosened and set me down, and as a man approaching me blocked out the porch light with his head, I noticed he was a police officer. I turned to face the voice behind me and saw that it was my mother. I began to cry and the 3 of us went inside. "I'm so glad you're home." I was worried I would never see you again." By that point, she was crying too. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened." "It's okay, just don't ever do that to me again. I'm not sure me or my shins could take it." A little laughter broke through my sobs, and I smiled a bit. "I'm sorry for kicking you, but why did you grab me like that?" "I was afraid that you would run away again." I was confused. "What do you mean?" "We found your note on your pillow," she said, and pointed at the piece of paper that the police officer was sliding across the table. I picked it up and read it. It was a running away letter. It said that I was unhappy and never wanted to see her or any of my friends again. The officer exchanged a few words with my mother on the porch while I stared at the letter. I didn't remember writing a letter. I didn't remember anything about this. But even if I sometimes went to the bathroom at night and didn't remember, or even if I could have gotten up and gone into the woods on my own, even if all of that could have been true, the only thing I could think at that point was, this isn't how you spell my name. I didn't write this letter. Balloons. A couple of days ago, I posted a story called Footsteps here. There were a number of questions which made me curious about certain details of my childhood, and so I spoke with my mother. Exasperated by my questions, she said, "Well, why don't you just tell them about the goddamn balloons if they're so interested?" And that made me remember so much that I had forgotten. This story will provide some greater context for the previous one, which I think you should listen to first, though the order isn't of vital importance. Hearing that one first will put you in a better place to understand this one. If you have questions, feel free to ask, and I will try to answer them. Also, both stories are long. I'm just hesitant to leave out any details that might be important. When I was 5 years old, I went to an elementary school that, from what I can understand, was very adamant about the importance of learning through activity. It was part of a new program designed to allow children to rise at their own pace, and to facilitate this, the school encouraged teachers to come up with very incentive lesson plans. Each teacher was given the latitude to create his or her own themes, which would run for the duration of the grade, and all the lessons in math, reading, etc. would be designed in the spirit of that theme. These themes were called groups. There was a space group, a sea group, an earth group, and the group I was in, community. In kindergarten in this country, you don't learn much except how to tie your shoes and how to share, so most of it isn't very memorable. I only remember 2 things very clearly. I was the best at writing my name the right way, and the balloon project, which was really the hallmark of the community group, since it was a pretty clever way to show how a community functioned at a basic level. You've probably heard of this activity. On one Friday, I remember it being Friday because I was excited about the project and it being the end of the week. Toward the beginning of the year, we walked into the classroom in the morning and saw a fully inflated balloon tied off with string taped to each of our desks. Sitting on each of our desks was a marker, a pen, a piece of paper, and an envelope. The project was to write a note on the paper, put it in the envelope, and attach it to the balloon, which we would draw a picture on if we wanted. Most of the kids started fighting over the balloons because they wanted different colors, but I started on my note, which I had thought a lot about. All of the notes had to follow a loose structure, but we were allowed to be creative within those boundaries. My note was something like, "You found my balloon. My name is blank and I attend blank elementary school. You can keep the balloon, but I hope you write me back. I like Mighty Max, exploring, building forts, swimming, and friends. What do you like? Write me back soon. Here's $1 for the mail." On the dollar, I wrote, "For stamps," right across the front, which my mom said was unnecessary, but I thought it was genius, so I did it. The teacher took a Polaroid of each of us with our balloons, and had us put them in the envelope along with our letter. They also included another letter that I assume explained the nature of the project, and sincere appreciation for anyone's participation in writing back and sending photos of the city or neighborhood. That was the whole idea, to build a sense of community without having to leave the school, and to establish safe contact with other people. It seemed like such a fun idea. Over the next couple of weeks, the letters started to roll in. Most came with pictures of different landmarks, and each time a letter would come in, the teacher would pin the picture on a big wall map that we had put up, showing where the letter had come from and how far the balloon had traveled. It was a very smart idea, because we actually looked forward to coming to school to see if we had gotten our letter. For the duration of the year, we had 1 day a week where we would write back to our Penpal, or other students' Penpal in case our letter hadn't come in yet. Mine was the last one to arrive. Mine was one of the last to arrive. When I came into the classroom, I looked at my desk and once again didn't see any letter waiting for me. But as I sat down, the teacher approached me and handed me an envelope. I must have looked so excited, because as I was about to open it, she put her hand on mine to stop me and said, "Please don't be upset." I didn't understand what she meant. Why would I be upset now that my letter had come? Initially, I was mystified she would even know what was in the envelope, but now I realize, of course, the teachers had screened the contents to make sure that there was nothing obscene, but all the same, how could I be disappointed? But when I opened the envelope, I understood. There was no letter. The only thing in the envelope was a Polaroid. But I couldn't really make out what it was. It looked like a patch of desert, but it was too blurry to even decipher. It appeared as if the camera had been moved while the picture was being taken. There was no return address, so I couldn't even write back if I wanted to. I was crushed. The school year pressed on, and the letters had stopped coming for nearly all of the other students. After all, you can only continue a written correspondence with a kindergartner for so long. Everyone, including myself, had lost interest in the letters almost completely. Then I got another envelope. My excitement was rejuvenated, and I reveled in the fact that I was still getting a letter when most of the other pen pals had abandoned their involvement. It made sense that I would receive another, since there had been nothing but a blurry picture in the first one, so this was probably to make up for that, but again, there was no letter. Just another picture. This one was more distinguishable, but I still didn't understand it. The photograph was angled way up, catching the top corner of a building, and the rest of the image was distorted by a lens flare from the sun. Because the balloons didn't travel very far, and because they were all launched on the same day, the board became a bit cluttered, and so the policy for the students still exchanging letters became that they could still take the photographs home if they wanted. My best friend Josh had the second highest number of pictures taken home by the end of the year. His pen pal was really cooperative and sent him pictures from all over the neighboring city. Josh took home, I think, 4 pictures, I took home nearly 50. The envelopes were all opened by the teacher, but after a while I stopped even looking at the pictures. However, I saved them in one of my drawers that housed my collection of Rock's baseball cards, comic book cards, Marvel metal cards for those who might remember, and little miniature baseball batting helmets that I'd get out of a vending machine at a Winn-Dixie after T-ball games. With the school year over, my attention turned to other things. My mom had gotten me a small snow cone machine for Christmas that year, and Josh had really coveted it, so much so that his parents bought him a slightly nicer one for his birthday, which was toward the end of the school year. That summer, we had the idea that we would set up a snow cone stand to make money. We thought we'd make a fortune selling snow cones at $1. Josh lived in a different neighborhood, but we eventually decided that my neighborhood would be better because there were a lot of people who cared for their lawns. The yards in my neighborhood were slightly bigger as well. We did this for 5 weekends in a row until my mom told us that we had to stop. And I've only recently come to understand why she did that. On the 5th weekend, Josh and I were counting our money. Because we both had a machine, we each had a separate stack of money that we put together into one stack and then split it evenly. We had made a total of $16 that day, and as Josh pulled out my 5th dollar, a feeling of profound surprise consumed me. The dollar said, "For stamps." Josh noticed my shock and asked if he had miscounted, but then I told him about the dollar, and he said, "That's so cool!" And as I thought about it, I came to agree. The idea that the dollar had made it right back to me after changing so many hands floored me. I rushed inside to tell my mom, but my excitement coupled with her being distracted by a phone call made my story incomprehensible, and she responded simply by saying, "Oh, wow, that's neat." Frustrated, I ran back outside and told Josh that I had something to show him. Back in my room, I opened the drawer and took out the stack of envelopes and showed him some of the pictures. I started with the first picture, and we went through about 10 before Josh lost interest and asked if I wanted to go play in the ditch, before his mom came to pick him up. So that's what we did. We had a dirt war for a while, but it was interrupted several times by rustling in the woods around us. There were raccoons and stray cats that lived in there, but this was making a little too much noise, and we traded guesses at what it was in an attempt to scare each other. My last guess was that it was a mummy, but in the end, Josh kept insisting that it was a robot because of the sounds that we heard. Before we left, he got a little serious and looked me in the eyes and said, "You heard it too, didn't you? It sounded like a robot. You heard it, right?" I had heard it, and since it sounded mechanical, I agreed it was probably a robot. Only now do I understand what we were hearing. When we got back, Josh's mom was waiting for him at the kitchen table with my mom. Josh told his mom about the robot, our moms laughed, and Josh went home. My mom and I ate dinner, and I went to bed. I didn't stay in bed for long before I crept out and decided that, due to the day's events, I would revisit the envelopes, since now the whole affair seemed much more interesting. I took the first envelope and set it on the floor and set the blurry desert Polaroid on top. I laid the second envelope right next to it and placed the oddly angled Polaroid of a building's top corner on top, and did this with each picture until they formed a grid that was about 5 by 10. I was always taught to be careful with things that I was collecting, even if I wasn't sure if they were valuable. I noticed that the pictures gradually became more decipherable. There was a tree with a bird on it, a speed limit sign, a power line, a group of people walking into a building. And then I saw something that vexed me so powerfully that I can now, as I write this, distinctly remember feeling dizzy and capable of only a single repeating thought. Why am I in this picture. In the photograph of the group of people entering the building, I saw myself holding hands with my mother in the very back of the crowd of people. We were at the very edge of the photo, but it was undeniably us. And as my eyes swam over the sea of Polaroids, I became increasingly anxious. It was a really odd feeling. It wasn't fear. It was the feeling you get when you're in trouble. I'm not sure why I was flooded with that feeling, but there I sat, floundering in the distinct sense that I had done something wrong, and this feeling only intensified as I looked on to the rest of the photos after the one that had so powerfully struck me. I was in every photo. None of them were close, none of them were only of me, but I was in every single one of them. Off to the side, in the back, bottom of the frame. Some of them only had the tiniest part of my face captured at the very edge, but nevertheless, I was there. I was always there. I didn't know what to do. Your mind works in funny ways as a kid, but there was a large part of me that was afraid of getting in trouble simply for still being up. Since I already had the looming feeling of having done something wrong, I decided I would wait until tomorrow. The next day, my mom was off work and spent most of the morning cleaning up around the house. I watched cartoons, I imagine, and waited until I thought it was a good time to show her the Polaroids. When she went out to get the mail, I grabbed a couple of the pictures and put them on the table in front of me, as I sat waiting for her to come back in. When she returned, she was already opening the mail and threw some junk mail into the trash can, and I told her, "Mom, can you come over here for a second? I have these pictures. Just give me a minute. I need to mark these on the calendar." After a minute or two, she came and stood behind me and asked me what I needed. I could hear her shuffling with the mail behind me, but I just looked at the Polaroids and told her about them. As I explained more and pointed to the pictures, her frequent "uh-huh" and "okays" decreased, and she was suddenly completely quiet and only making a little noise with the mail. The next noise I heard her make sounded as if she was trying to catch her breath in a room that had no air left in it. At last her struggling gasps were conquered, and she simply dropped the remaining mail on the table and ran to the kitchen to get the phone. "Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't know about these." With the phone pressed to her ear, she was walking and running back and forth and shouting into it. I nervously fiddled with the mail sitting next to the Polaroids. The top envelope had something sticking out of it that I thoughtlessly and anxiously pulled on until it came out. Another Polaroid. Confused, I thought that somehow one of my Polaroids had slipped into the stack of mail. But when I turned it over and looked at it, I realized that I had not seen this one yet. To my dismay, it was me, but this one was a much closer shot. I was surrounded by trees and was smiling, but it wasn't just me, I noticed. Josh was there too. It was us. From yesterday. I started yelling for my mom, who was still screaming into the phone. I repeatedly yelled for her until she finally responded with, "What?" And I could only think to ask, "Who are you calling?" "I'm talking with the police, honey." But why? I didn't mean to do anything." She stopped me and answered me with a response that I never understood until I was forced to revisit these events from the earliest years of my life. She grabbed the envelope off the table, and the picture of Josh and I spun and slid, landing next to the other Polaroids in front of me. She held the envelope up to my eyes, but I could only look at her and watch as all the color began draining out of her face. with tears welling up in her eyes. She said that she had to call the police because there was no postmark on that Polaroid. Boxes. For those of you who have heard my other stories and asked if there was more and received cryptic answers, I want to apologize for being dishonest. I said several times in the comments that there was nothing after footsteps, but that wasn't true. The events of the following story weren't locked away in the recesses of my mind. I've always remembered them. It wasn't until I remembered balloons and spoke with my mother about the following events that I realized how intertwined this story was with everything else. But I originally hadn't planned on sharing this. My desire to withhold this memory was due mostly to the fact I don't think I showed good judgment in it. I also wanted consent from another person to tell it, so as not to misrepresent what transpired. I didn't expect there to be a lot of interest in the other stories. So I never thought that I would really get pressed for this much detail, but I would have been happy to keep this to myself for the rest of my life. I haven't been able to reach the other party, but I would feel disingenuous withholding the story from those who wanted more information now that I've spoken with my mother and another connecting line has been drawn. What follows is as accurate a recollection as I could manage. I spent the summer before my first year of elementary school learning how to climb trees. There was one particular pine tree outside my house that seemed almost designed for me. It had branches that were so low I could easily grab them without a boost, and for the first couple of days after I first learned how to pull myself up, I would just sit on the lowest branch, dangling my feet. The tree was outside our back fence and was easily visible from the kitchen window, which was just above the sink. Before too long, my mother and I developed a routine where I would go play on the tree while she washed the dishes, because she could easily see me while she did other things. As the summer passed, my abilities grew, and before too long, I was climbing fairly high. As the tree got taller, its branches only got thinner and more widely spaced. I eventually reached a point where I couldn't actually climb any higher, and so the game had to change. I began to concentrate on speed, and in the end, I could reach my highest branch in 25 seconds. I got too confident, and one afternoon I tried to step from a branch before I had firmly grasped the next one. I fell about 20 feet and broke my arm very badly in 2 places. My mom was running toward me, yelling, and I remember her sounding like she was underwater. I don't remember what she said, but I do remember being surprised by just how white my bone was. I was going to start kindergarten with a cast, and I wouldn't even have any friends to sign it. My mom must have felt terrible because the day before I started school, she brought home a kitten. He was just a baby and was striped with tan and white. As soon as she put him down, he crawled into an empty case of soda that was sitting on the floor. I named him Boxes. Boxes was only an outside cat when he escaped. My mom had him declawed so he wouldn't destroy the furniture, so as a result, we did our best to keep him inside. He'd get out every now and then, and we'd find him somewhere in the backyard chasing some bug or lizard, though he could hardly ever catch one because he had no front claws. He was pretty evasive, but we'd always catch him and carry him back inside. He'd scramble to look back over my shoulder. I told my mom that it was because he was planning his strategy for next time. Once inside, we'd give him some tuna fish, and he came to learn that the sound of the can opener would signal that. So he would come running whenever he heard it. This conditioning came in handy later because toward the end of our time at that house, Boxes would get out much more often and would run around under the house into the crawl space where neither of us wanted to follow because it was cramped and probably crawling with bugs and rodents. Ingeniously, my mom thought to hook the can opener to an extension cord out back and run it right underneath the hole that Boxes had gone through, Eventually, he would emerge with his loud meows, looking excited by the sound, and then horrified at how he could run such a cruel ruse on him. A can opener with no tuna made no sense to Boxes. The last time he escaped to under the house was actually our last day in it. My mom had put the house on the market and had begun packing our things. We didn't have much, and we stretched the packing out a while. Though I had already packed up all my clothes at my mom's request. My mom could tell that I was really sad about moving and wanted the transition to actually be smooth. I guess she thought that having my clothes in the box would reinforce the idea that we were moving, but things wouldn't change much. When Boxes got out, as we were loading some things into the moving van, my mom cursed because she had already packed the can opener and wasn't sure where it was. I pretended to go look for it so I wouldn't have to go under the house, and my mom, probably completely aware of my little scam, moved one of the panels and crawled in. She came out with Boxes pretty quickly, and seemed pretty unnerved, which made me feel even better about getting out of it. My mom made some hasty phone calls while I packed a little more, and then came into my room and told me she had spoken to the realtor, and we were going to start moving into the other house that day. She said it like it was excellent news, but I had thought we would have a little more time. She originally said that we weren't moving until the end of next week, and it was only Tuesday. What's more, we weren't even completely finished packing. But my mom said sometimes it was just easier to replace things than to pack them and haul them all over the city. I didn't even get to grab the rest of my boxed clothes. I asked if I could still call Josh to say goodbye, but she said we would just call him from our new house. And we left in the moving van. I managed to stay in touch with Josh for years, which is surprising since we no longer went to the same school. Our parents weren't close friends, but they knew that we were, and so they would accommodate our desire to see one another by driving us back and forth to sleepovers, sometimes every weekend. For Christmas one year, our parents even pooled their money and got us some really nice walkie-talkies that were advertised to work across a range that extended past the distance between our houses. They also had batteries that would last for days if the walkie-talkie was out but not used. They would only occasionally work well enough that we could talk across the city, but when we stayed over, we would use them around the house, talking in mock radio speak that we had taken from movies, and they worked great for that. Thanks to our parents, we were still friends when we were 10. One weekend, I was staying over at Josh's, and my mom had called me to say goodnight. She was still pretty watchful even when she couldn't actually watch me, but I'd gotten so used to it that I didn't even notice, even if Josh did. She sounded upset. Boxes was missing. This must have been a Saturday night because I had spent the night at Josh's the previous night and was going to stay one more day because we had school on Monday. Boxes had been missing since Friday afternoon. I gathered that she had not seen him since returning home after dropping me off. She must have decided to tell me that he was missing because if he didn't come home before I did, then I would be devastated at not only his absence, but how she could have kept it from me. She told me not to worry. He'll come back. He always does. But Boxes didn't come back. 3 weekends later, I stayed at Josh's again. I was still upset about Boxes, but my mom told me that there had been many times when pets had disappeared from home for weeks or even months only to return to their own. She said they always knew where home was and would always try to get back. I was explaining this to Josh when a thought hit me so hard that I interrupted my own sentence to say it aloud. What if Boxes thought of the wrong home? Josh was confused. What? He lives with you. He knows where his home is. But he grew up somewhere else. He was raised in my old house a couple of neighborhoods away, Josh. Maybe he still thinks of that place as home, like I do. Oh, I get it. Well, that would be great. We'll tell my dad tomorrow, and he'll take us over there. No, he won't. My mom said that we couldn't ever go back to that place because the new owners wouldn't want to be bothered. She said that she told your mom and dad the same thing. Josh persisted. Okay, then we'll just go out exploring tomorrow and make our way to... No. If we get spotted, your dad will find out, and so will my mom. We have to go there ourselves. Tonight. It didn't take that much convincing to get Josh on board. He was usually the one to come up with ideas like this. But we had never snuck out of his house before. It actually turned out to be incredibly easy. The window in his room opened to the backyard, and he had a latched wooden fence that wasn't locked. After those 2 minor hurdles, we slipped off into the night, flashlight and walkie-talkies in hand. There were 2 ways to get from Josh's house to my old house. We could walk on the street and make all the turns, or go through the woods, which would take about half the time. It would have taken about 2 hours to walk there taking the street, but I suggested that we go that way anyway. I told him it was because I didn't want to get lost. Josh refused and said that if we were seen, they might recognize him and tell his dad. He threatened to go home if we didn't just take the shortcut, and I accepted it because I didn't want to go by myself. Josh didn't know about the last time I walked through these woods at night. The woods were much less creepy with a friend and a flashlight, and we were making pretty good time. I wasn't entirely sure where we were, but Josh seemed confident enough, and that bolstered my morale. We passed through a particularly thick patch of tangled trees when the strap of my walkie-talkie got caught on a branch. Josh had the flashlight, and so I was struggling to get the walkie free when I heard Josh say, "Hey man, want to go for a swim?" I looked over to where he was shining the flashlight, though I closed my eyes as I did. Because I now knew where we were. He was pointing at the pool float. This was where I had woken up in the woods all those years ago. I felt a lump in my throat and the sting of fresh tears in my eyes as I continued to struggle with the walkie. Frustrated, I yanked on it hard enough to break it free, and I turned and walked to Josh, who had partially laid down on the pool float in a mock sunbathing pose. As I walked toward him, I stumbled and nearly fell into a fairly large hole that was sitting in the middle of the small clearing. But I regained my balance and stopped right at its edge. It was deep. I was actually surprised by the size of the hole, but more surprised by the fact that I didn't remember it. I realized it must not have been there the night that I was, because it was in the same spot I had woken up. I put it out of my mind and turned to Josh. "Quit messing around, man. You saw I was stuck over there, and you were just laying here joking around." I punctuated the sentence with a kick to an exposed part of the float, and a screeching arose from it. Josh's smile inverted. He suddenly looked terrified and was struggling to get off the float, but he couldn't in a quick manner due to the awkward way he had been laying on it. Each time he would fall back on the float, the screeching would intensify. I wanted to help Josh, but I couldn't move any closer. My legs wouldn't cooperate. I hated these woods. I picked up the flashlight that he had thrown in his thrashing and shined it on the float, not knowing what to expect. Finally, he got off of it and rushed next to me, looking to where I had shined it. And there was a rat. I started laughing nervously, and we both watched the rat run off into the woods, taking the screeches with it. Josh lightly punched me in the arm, and the smile slowly returned to his face, and we continued walking. We quickened our pace and made it out of the woods faster than we thought we would, and we found ourselves back in my old neighborhood. The last time I had rounded the bend ahead, I had seen my house fully illuminated, and all the memories of what transpired came flooding back. I felt a skipping in my heart as we were finally turning the corner and about to face the full view of my old house, remembering last time how incandescent it was. But this time, all the lights were off. From a distance, I could see my old climbing tree, and as my mind raced to trace the steps of causality backward, I realized I wouldn't be here tonight if that tree hadn't grown. And I was briefly in awe of how all events were like that. As we got closer, I could see that the lawn looked terrible. I couldn't even guess when it had last been mowed. One of the shutters had partially broken loose and was rocking back and forth in the breeze, and overall the house just looked dirty. I was sad to see my old home in such a state of disrepair. Why would my mom care if we bothered the new owners if they cared so little about where they lived? And then I realized there were no new owners. The house was abandoned, though it looked simply forsaken. Why would my mom lie to me about our house having new people in it? But I thought this was actually a good thing. It would be easier to look around for boxes if we didn't have to worry about being spotted by a new family. This would make it much quicker. Josh interrupted my thoughts as we walked through the gate and up to the house itself. "Your old house sucks, dude," he yelled as quietly as he could. "Oh, shut up, Josh. Even like this, it's still nicer than yours." "Hey. Okay. I think boxes is probably under the house. One of us has to go under and look, but the other should stay next to the opening in case he comes running out." "Are you serious? There is no way I'm going under there. It's your cat, man. You do it." "Look, I'll game you for it. Unless you're too scared," I said, holding my fist over my upturned palm. "Fine. But we go on shoot, not on 3. It's rock, paper, scissors, shoot, not 1, 2, 3. I know how to play the game, Josh. You're the one who always messes up. 2 out of 3. I lost. I wiggled loose the panel that my mom would always move whenever she had to crawl under there for boxes. She only had to do it a couple of times since the can opener trick usually worked, but when she had to do it, she hated it. Especially that last time. And as I looked into the darkness of the crawl space, I had a greater appreciation for why. Before we moved, she said that it was actually better that boxes ran under here, despite how hard it could be to get him out. It was less dangerous than him jumping over the fence and running around the neighborhood. All that was true, but I was still dreading doing this. I grabbed the flashlight and the walkie and began to crawl. A powerful smell overtook me. It smelled like death. I turned on my walkie.
"Josh, are you there?" "This is Macho Man. Come back." "Josh, cut it out. There's something wrong down here." "What do you mean?" "It stinks. It smells like something dead." "Is it boxes?" "I really hope not."
I set down the walkie and moved the flashlight around as I crawled forward. Looking through the hole from the outside, you could see all the way back with the right lighting. But you had to be inside to see around the support blocks that held the house up. I'd say there was about 40% of the area that you couldn't see unless you were actually in the crawl space, but even inside, I discovered that I could only see directly where the flashlight was pointing. I realized that this would make scouting around the place much more difficult. As I moved forward, the smell intensified. The fear was growing in me that Boxes had come here and something had happened to him. I shined the flashlight around but couldn't see much of anything. I wrapped my fingers around a support block to pull myself forward, and as I did that, I felt something that made my hand recoil. Fur. My heart sank and I prepared myself emotionally for what I was about to see. I crawled slowly so I could prolong what I knew was coming, and I inched my eyes and the flashlight past the block to see what was on the other side. And then I staggered back in horror.
"Jesus Christ!"
escaping my trembling mouth. It was a hideous and twisted creature, badly decomposed. Its skin had rotted away on its face so that its teeth appeared to be enormous. And the smell was unbearable.
What is it? Are you okay? Is it boxes?
I reached for the walkie.
No. It's not boxes. Well, what the hell is it then? I don't know.
I shined the light on it again and looked at it with less fear in my vision, and then chuckled.
It's a raccoon. Well, keep looking. I'm gonna go into the house to see if he might have made it in there somehow. What? No! Josh, you can't go in there. What if Boxes is down here and runs out? He can't. I put the board back.
I looked and saw that he was telling the truth.
Why would you do that? Don't worry, man. You can move it easy. This makes more sense. If Boxes ran out and I missed him, then he'd be gone. If he's down there, then grab him tight and I'll come move the board. And if he's not, then you can move it yourself when I look in the house.
Some of his points were good, and I doubted that he'd even be able to get in.
Fine. But be careful, and don't touch anything. There's a bunch of my old clothes still in the boxes in my room. You can look in there and see if he crawled in one. And make sure to bring your walkie.
I realized that it would be pitch black in there. The power would have been turned off since no one was paying the bill. With any luck, he'd be able to see from the streetlights that might cast some light inside. Otherwise, I'm not sure what he would do. Before too long, I heard footsteps right over my head and felt old dirt raining down on me.
Josh, is that you? Breaker. The eagle has landed. What's your 20, Princess Jasmine? Fucking asshole. Macho Man, my 20 is in your bathroom looking at your stash of magazines. Looks like you have a thing for dudes? What's the report on that?
That didn't make any sense. I could hear him laughing without the walkie, and I started laughing too. And then I heard the footsteps fade away a little. He was on his way to my room.
Man, it's dark in here. Hey, are you sure you had boxes of clothes in here? I don't see any. Yeah. There should be a couple of boxes in front of the closet. There aren't any boxes in here. Let me check to see if maybe you put the boxes in the closet before you left.
I started thinking that maybe my mom had come and picked up what I had left, or given them away because I had outgrown a lot of them, but I remembered leaving the boxes there. I didn't even have time to close the last one before we left. While I was waiting for Josh to tell me what he found, I kicked out my leg, which had started falling asleep because of the position I was in, and it hit something. I looked back and saw something strange. A blanket. And all around it were bowls. I crawled a little closer to it. The blanket smelled moldy and most of the bowls were empty, but one of them had something I still recognized in it. Cat food. It was a different kind than we gave to Boxes, but I suddenly understood. My mom had set up a little place for Boxes to encourage him to come here instead of running around the neighborhood. That made a lot of sense, and it seemed even more likely that Boxes would have come back to this place.
I found your clothes. Oh, nice. Where are the boxes? Like I said, no boxes. Your clothes are in your closet. They're hanging up.
I felt a chill. That was impossible. I had packed everything. Even though we weren't supposed to move for another 2 weeks when we left, I remembered packing them and thinking that it was stupid for me to have to get clothes out of the box to put them back in. I had packed them. Yet somebody had hung them back up. Why, though? Josh needed to get out of there.
That can't be right, Josh. They're supposed to be in boxes. Stop messing around and just come back outside. I'm not joking, man. I'm looking at them. Maybe you just thought that you left them? Wow. You really like to look at yourself, don't you? What? What do you mean? Your walls, man. Your walls are covered in Polaroids of yourself. There are hundreds of them. What, did you hire somebody to...
Silence. I checked my walkie to see if I had switched it off somehow, but it was fine. I could hear footsteps, but I couldn't tell exactly where Josh was going. I waited for Josh to finish his sentence, thinking that his finger had just slipped off the button. But he didn't continue. He seemed to be stomping around the house now. I was just about to radio him when he came back.
There's someone in the house.
His voice was hushed and broken. I could hear he was on the verge of tears. I wanted to respond, but how loud was his walkie turned up? What if the other person heard it? I said nothing and just waited and listened. Shit. He had been found. I was sure of it. The person had found him and was hurting him. I broke out in tears. What would I do? He was my only friend next to boxes, and then I realized. What if Josh told him I was under here? What could I possibly do? As I struggled to compose myself, I thankfully heard Josh's voice cut through the walkie.
He's got something, man. It's a big bag. He just threw it on the floor and... Oh, God. I think it just moved.
I wanted to run. I wanted to save Josh. I wanted to go for help. I wanted so many things, but I was trapped there. As I lay unable to move, my eyes focused on the corner of the house that was right under my room. I moved my flashlight. My breath hitched at what I saw. Animals. Dozens of them. All dead. In piles around the perimeter of the crawl space. Could boxes be among these corpses? Was this what the cat food was for? Seeing this broke my shock, as I knew I had to get out of there, and scrambled to the board. I pushed on it, but it wouldn't budge. I couldn't move it because it was wedged in there, and I couldn't get my fingers around it. God damn it, Josh! I whispered to myself. I could feel thunderous footsteps above me. The house was shaking. I heard Josh scream, and it was matched by another scream that wasn't full of fear. As I continued pushing, I felt the board move, but I knew it wasn't me who was moving it. I could hear footsteps above me and in front of me, and shouting and screaming filled the brief silences between the footsteps. I moved back and held my walkie ready to try and defend myself, and the board was thrown aside and an arm shot in and grabbed for me. Let's go, now! It was Josh. I scrambled out of the opening, holding the flashlight and the walkie. When we got to the fence, we both jumped it, but Josh's walkie fell. He reached for it, and I told him to forget it. We had to move. Behind us, I could hear yelling, though they weren't words. Just guttural sounds. And we, perhaps foolishly, ran for the woods to get back to Josh's quicker and be somewhat harder to follow. The whole way through the woods, Josh kept yelling, "My picture!" He took my picture. But I knew the man already had Josh's picture. From all those years ago at the ditch. I suppose Josh still thought those mechanical sounds were just a robot. We made it back to his house and back into the room before his parents woke up. I asked him about the big bag and if it really moved, but he said he couldn't be sure. He kept apologizing about dropping the walkie at the house, but obviously I didn't care about that. We didn't go to sleep and sat peering out the window, maybe waiting for him. I went home later that day, as it was about 3 a.m. already. I told my mom the basics of the story a couple of days ago. She broke down and was furious about the danger I had put myself in. I asked her why she made up all those things about bothering the new owners to stop me from going. Why did she think the house was so dangerous? She became irate and hysterical, but she answered my question. She grabbed my hand and squeezed it as hard as she could, harder than I thought capable, and locked her eyes to mine, whispering as if she was afraid of being overheard. Because I never put any fucking blankets or bowls under the house for boxes. And you weren't the only one to find them. I understood why she had looked so uneasy after she brought boxes out from under the house on our last day there. She found more than spiders or a rat's nest under the house. And now I understood why we left almost 2 weeks early. I understood why she tried to stop me from going back. She knew. She knew he made his home under ours. And she kept it from me. I got home from Josh's that day. I threw my stuff on the floor and it scattered everywhere. I didn't care. I just wanted to sleep. I woke up around 9 p.m. to the sound of boxes meowing. My heart leapt. He had finally come home. I was a little sick about the fact that if I had just waited a day, none of the previous night's events would have happened, and I'd have boxes anyway. But that didn't matter. He was back. I got off my bed and called for him, looking around to catch a glint of light off of his eyes. The crying continued, and I followed it. It was coming from under the bed. I laughed a little, thinking I had just crawled under a house looking for him, and how this was just so much better. His meows were being muffled by his shirt, so I flung it aside and smiled, yelling, "Welcome home, boxes!" His cries were coming from my walkie-talkie. Boxes never came home.